Before you drift into sleep tonight, let's take a journey inward. A journey that asks nothing of you but to simply listen, to let go, and to rest. You don't need to remember everything. You don't need to analyze or take notes. This is not a test. This is an invitation to release the weight of the day, to let your mind settle like dust after a long journey, and to allow the wisdom of Carl Jung to gently guide you into a deeper, more peaceful state. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel the surface beneath you, supporting your body completely. Notice your breath, in and out, natural and easy. There's nowhere to be, nothing to prove, no one watching. Tonight, as you listen, you'll hear about silence, about turning inward, about the power that comes not from striving, but from stillness, and perhaps without even trying. These ideas will weave themselves into your dreams, planting seeds that will grow quietly while you rest. Jung understood something profound about the human soul, that transformation happens not in the noise of the world, but in the quiet spaces we create within ourselves. And what is sleep, if not the ultimate act of surrender, the ultimate silence? Each night, we release our grip on consciousness and trust that we will return, renewed. So let this be easy. Let the words wash over you like waves on a shore. Some will stay with you, others will drift away. And that's exactly as it should be. As you sink deeper into relaxation, remember, you are safe here. Your body knows how to rest. Your mind knows how to let go. And in this space between waking and sleeping, you are exactly where you need to be. Now, let's begin. Have you ever wondered, why do we expend so much energy explaining, proving, or seeking acceptance from others when our very own selves have never truly been heard? Carl Jung, who devoted his entire life to exploring the essence of the human soul, revealed a truth that most of us evade. Happiness does not reside in being recognized, but in self-recognition. Jung termed this journey individuation, a process in which you must courageously venture inward, gazing directly at what you have always avoided: chaos, fear, and the shadow aspects. So, what truly happens when you pause, withdraw your energy from the external world, and begin to focus utterly inward? What shifts when you choose silence and allow the outcomes to speak on your behalf? That journey is not for the superficial. It demands that you confront the emptiness in the absence of surrounding noise and summon the courage to accept that truth sometimes echoes only in silence. But it is precisely in that moment that you uncover a different form of power. The power of one who channels all energy into inner growth, into becoming the most authentic version of oneself. The question is, are you ready to embrace silence, cease explaining, and let your actions and very presence declare it all? Part 1. Why is silence powerful? In a world where people seem endlessly vying to speak out, to prove themselves, to be seen and acknowledged, silence becomes a rare luxury. We have grown accustomed to responding instantly, to saying something that fits the moment, to defending our views lest we appear weak. Yet, Jung illuminated a profound paradox. It is precisely when we dare to be silent, when we refuse the compulsion to voice ourselves, that we truly enter the realm of inner power. Silence is not merely the absence of words. It is a state of consciousness. It is the moment when we withdraw energy from external distractions to return inward. In Jung's language, this is the instant when we allow the unconscious, that profound layer often obscured by the clamor of daily life, to begin to speak. When we are caught up in speaking, we hear only the echo of the ego, the social mask persona we don to adapt. But when we halt, when we fall silent, the shadow rises, the repository of repressed parts, denied emotions, and true power can only emerge when we dare to confront it. Consider a very ordinary situation. You find yourself in an argument with a colleague or loved one. In that tense moment, instinct urges an immediate retort, a need to prove you are right. that you are not being dismissed. But once the argument cools, you realize most of what you said holds no meaning and may even have worsened the situation. In contrast, if you choose silence, granting yourself a few deep breaths, you gain the clarity to see the bigger picture. Silence is not defeat. It is a form of control. Control over energy, emotions, and the very dynamics at play. This is the power that noise can never attain. Modern psychology confirms this. When entering silence, the prefrontal cortex, the hub of thinking and decision-making, gains space to operate. Freed from limbic interference, we see clearly and choose wisely. Thus, the pause functions as a pause button, restoring the brain's balance and yielding sharper decisions. This clarity is the tangible form of power not born from shouting but from the ability to see clearly and choose rightly. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Silence is the path to that process. We cannot heed the unconscious amid noise. Just as to hear the sound of a stream, we must step away from the bustling marketplace. Silence provides the environment for dialogue between consciousness and the unconscious. And from that dialogue, we uncover archetypes, sources of creative energy, clues to our true selves. From another angle, silence is also a form of refusal. When we are silent, we refuse to join the dance of the collective ego. Modern society glorifies display. The more people know about us, the more value we feel. But in truth, the more we display, the more we deplete our inner energy. Silence is the refusal to be drained by the demands of comparison, competition, and proof. It is a declaration: I do not need to explain myself to you to exist. And it is in that refusal that we find freedom. Observe someone building a new habit, exercising, learning a skill, or nurturing a personal project. If they constantly talk about their plans, boasting to everyone about what they will do, they feel a fleeting satisfaction as if the work is already done. Studies in motivational psychology show that announcing goals releases dopamine in the brain, akin to achieving the goal itself. But this is illusory gratification, diminishing the drive to act. Conversely, the one who chooses silence, focusing solely on daily effort, accumulates power through consistency. This is enduring power unaccompanied by fanfare, yet yielding unmistakable results. Silence also wields its social power. In conversation, the silent one often holds invisible control. For silence compels others to fill the void, to speculate, to project their own images onto you. Well-timed silence not only renders you enigmatic, but amplifies the weight of your message manifold. Just as in music, the spaces between notes craft the melody. If everything were continuous sound, the piece would dissolve into chaos. It is silence that gives sound its meaning. And in life, silence that lends words their value. Yet the power of silence extends beyond the personal or social. It is the bridge to the spiritual realm, to the mysterious depths of the psyche. Across traditions from Christianity to Buddhism, Sufism to Zen, silence is revered as the path to ultimate reality. Jung, with his fascination for spiritual symbols and myths, saw that silence is not merely a skill but a gateway. Crossing that threshold, the individual transcends the petty ego, opening to a vast connection with the collective unconscious, the repository of humanity's ancestral wisdom. Imagine sitting before a still lake. If the surface is rippled by wind or voices, you see only chaotic waves. But when the water lies calm, it becomes a mirror reflecting the entire sky. The human mind is the same. Only in silence does it turn into a clear mirror reflecting the truths of the universe. This is why silence is power. It not only allows control over emotions, aids wise action, but also unlocks connection to a profound layer of reality that words can never touch. And perhaps you too have known such a moment when silence became the mirror, illuminating what you long dared not face. If so, leave a sign in the comments below. An experience, a memory, or simply a concise phrase, who knows? Your silence might awaken someone still seeking themselves. Thus, stillness is never weakness. It is not retreat, but the gathering of energy, not evasion, but a form of courage. The courage to forego proof, to confront oneself, and to touch truth. In silence, you do not lose power. So before every hasty response, try 3 deliberate breaths and survey the whole. That is the pause button, returning choice to your hands. Part 2. Focusing on oneself is not selfishness, but awakening. But that power holds meaning only when directed rightly inward toward the personal journey. This is where so many misunderstand. They deem self-focus as selfishness, neglecting others and placing the ego above all. Yet Jung would tell you, it is not selfishness, but awakening. For only by becoming yourself can you truly be present for others. We are conditioned by a society that exalts sacrifice, where self-forgetfulness is deemed noble. From childhood, we are taught to think of the collective, to put the common good first. It all sounds right, but taken to extremes, it turns us into shadows of ourselves. We give until depleted, strain to please everyone, and one day awaken to find ourselves strangers in our own lives. This is the affliction Jung called the loss of the authentic self, leaving only the social mask, the persona. Focusing on oneself does not mean withdrawing into selfishness, but returning to reconnect with one's own center. Imagine you are an ancient tree. If you do not nourish your roots with soil, water, and light, you cannot offer shade to anyone. A tree cannot say, "I need no soil, I only need to shelter others." The truth is, it must draw sustenance, nurture itself first. And that is not selfishness. It is the law of survival. Humans are no different. If you neglect your inner world, fail to build your own growth, you will soon exhaust yourself and succumb to spiritual burnout. The state now termed burnout. A real-world example. Consider mothers who strain endlessly for their children. They work ceaselessly, sacrifice personal hobbies, and even overlook their own health. Such love is admirable. But do you see how many children grow up insecure? For they sense their mother's fatigue and tension, and their subconscious learns that love means endurance, self-sacrifice. In contrast, a mother who tends to herself, maintaining balance, imparts a different lesson. Love means living fully with oneself to radiate peace to others. This is the point Jung emphasized. Self-focus generates radiating power, not selfishness. Modern psychology reinforces this. Studies on self-regulation show that those who prioritize their inner needs exhibit better emotional control, wiser decisions, and healthier relationships. Conversely, those who perpetually ignore themselves to appease others fall prey to anxiety, depression, and feelings of exploitation. They believe they live altruistically, but in truth, they dwell in the bondage of fear of rejection, unloved, unaccepted. Jung called this the dominance of the shadow. When you continually suppress your needs, that rejected part does not vanish. It burrows into the unconscious, growing stronger until it erupts as anger, envy, exhaustion, or even illness. Thus, self-focus is not merely a wise choice, but a responsibility. It is how you dissolve the shadow before it engulfs you. Jung always stressed, you cannot give the world what you yourself lack. If you hold no peace, you sow tension. If you bear no self-love, you offer only bitter sacrifice. Self-focus also means daring to gaze at your most authentic parts, both light and dark. It is the courage to face what you typically evade. Smallness, latent selfishness, weakness you dare not admit. In focusing, you neither idealize nor judge yourself. You look squarely, and in that direct gaze you grow. This is not selfishness but awakening, a state where illusions no longer blind you, where you assume full responsibility for your life. Think of those who amid crisis choose to turn inward. Many emerge from loss, illness, or shock more insightful, profound, and empowered. Why? Because crisis forces them to cease chasing others, to focus on themselves for survival. And that focus opens the door to awakening. They no longer live for recognition, but for truth. Jung termed this the onset of individuation, the journey to becoming one's true self, no longer dissolved in collective expectations. Do you know Oprah Winfrey? She endured a childhood scarred by abuse, rejection, and poverty. But rather than let that shadow consume her, Oprah turned inward, confronting pain, learning to heed her inner voice and heal. That journey transformed her into one of the world's most inspiring icons. Oprah once said, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." This is vivid proof of self-focus's power after a crisis. And it is not only the great figures who tread this path. It might be an ordinary man who lost his job after years of company loyalty. Initially, the shock plunged him into confusion and disorientation. But instead of wallowing in resentment, he chose time for reflection, learning a new skill, exercising regularly, journaling daily to grasp his emotions. A year later, he not only secured a better job, but also emerged more confident, resilient, and intentional in living. Self-focus is both revolutionary and healing. Revolutionary as it shatters old patterns. Living for others gazes for approval, for praise. Healing as it grants the chance to mend bonds with your own soul. When you invest energy in yourself, you begin to sense small joys more keenly, rediscover forgotten creativity, and claim the peace you long thought undeserved. And from that moment, you can step outward and be fully present with others. You no longer give love from fear of loss, but from abundance. You no longer help for recognition, but because it flows naturally from a whole soul. This is the fundamental difference between selfishness and awakening. Selfishness stems from scarcity, awakening from abundance, and only through self-focus can you journey from scarcity to abundance. And perhaps this is the moment you grant yourself a pause. Try sitting still, drawing a deep breath, and asking which true part of you are you living from? And how much remains mere performance for others? Are you giving from wholeness or from depletion? Do not rush to answer. Simply sit with a question. For sometimes silence alone unlocks answers that 1,000 words cannot yield. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Life's greatest privilege is not being loved by many, but becoming oneself. Every path to truth, to love, to peace begins there. Part 3. Why do things start to fall into place when you are silent and focused? And then, as you gradually live in alignment with that true self, a strange phenomenon begins to unfold. The external world seems to mirror the changes within you. What once appeared coincidental becomes meaningful. Knots untie themselves, and you realize that everything starts to fall into place because you have shifted your own energy field. Carl Jung had a famous concept, synchronicity, the phenomenon of meaningful coincidence. He believed that when a person enters deep harmony with their inner world, the outer world begins to rearrange itself to reflect that change. You might call it a coincidence, but for Jung it is the resonance between the inner and outer realms. Just as when you tune an instrument, all the other notes in the orchestra naturally find harmony. When you are silent and focused, you are tuning yourself. And from there, life begins to become an ordered symphony. Recall a time in your life when your mind was in turmoil, when you were pulled into countless distractions, arguments, and anxieties. At that moment, everything around you also became chaotic. Relationships strained, work faltered, friends drifted away. Conversely, there are times when you are focused, clear, and consistent in action, and you find life opening doors. You encounter the right people, the right opportunities at the right moments. This is not mere chance. Psychology calls it the reticular activating system, RA. a filtering mechanism of the brain. When you focus on something, the RA automatically brings related opportunities, information, and connections into your field of vision. In other words, when you change within, the world outside changes accordingly, because your brain has been reprogrammed to perceive the new order. Jung went beyond neuroscience. He believed that our personal unconscious is connected to a collective unconscious, a shared energy field of humanity. And when we live in alignment with our inner essence, we resonate with this field, causing what suits us to naturally appear. This is why those who live authentically often have strong intuition, encountering strange serendipities that others cannot explain. But in truth, it is the reflection from the inner world onto the outer. Imagine a mirror. When it is covered in dust, the image you see is distorted and blurry. But when you wipe away the dust, the reflection becomes clear. Life is the same. When you are dominated by noise and distraction, what you attract is chaos. But when you are silent, focused, you are wiping clean the inner mirror. And immediately the reflected world becomes clear, luminous. Things fall into place. Not because the world suddenly changes, but because you have changed your perspective, your way of interacting with it. A familiar example. Have you ever noticed that when you decide to buy a certain car, suddenly you see that model everywhere? This is not because suddenly more people are buying the same car as you, but because your mind has been tuned to notice it. Life operates the same way. When you focus on personal growth, you begin to see opportunities, relationships, and paths that serve that journey. What you focus on expands. This is a fundamental principle of both psychology and Jungian philosophy. The key here is life begins to align not through some mystical arrangement from outside, but as the natural consequence of a soul that has found inner order like a small boat in the ocean. When the rudder is loose, the boat is easily swept aimlessly by waves. But when you grip the rudder firmly, though the sea remains vast, the boat begins to head in the right direction. Silence and focus are precisely that, gripping the rudder of your life. And from there, external storms no longer rock you as before. One of the clearest real-world examples is in those who have experienced disorientation and then chosen to live fully with themselves. Some leave stable jobs to pursue artistic passions. Others end long but toxic relationships to reclaim freedom. Still, others quietly step away from the crowd, devoting time to learning and personal development. At first, they all face doubt, loneliness, and judgmental gazes from outside. But then one day you see that they begin to meet the right supporters, find fitting work, and harvest successes they once could not imagine. This is not good luck. It is the result of placing themselves in harmony with their true path. However, there is an important truth. You cannot pretend to emit the energy you want while inside you are chaotic and misaligned with it. Many try to positivize themselves by repeating affirmations, forcing smiles, or crafting a perfect image on social media. They think that faking it until you make it is enough. But the universe is not fooled by the mask. Others may be impressed by the exterior, but the collective unconscious, the energy field Jung always spoke of, senses directly from your true frequency. This is why so many talk about success but never attract it. They share about love but continue encountering wounding relationships because their true energy still holds doubt, fear, and inner division. And this dissonance creates noise that causes life to reflect the chaos. Jung once emphasized, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. If the shadow has not been acknowledged, it will always seep into every energy you emit. Thus, the prerequisite for things truly falling into place is that you must be honest with yourself. Not pretending peace, but truly embarking on the healing journey. Not denying the shadow, but daring to confront and integrate it. When within you becomes unified between consciousness and unconscious, light and shadow, the energy you emit will naturally be potent and clear. Remember, the universe is never chaotic, only our minds are. And when we are silent, when we focus, the inner chaos dissolves. The outer world immediately becomes a mirror reflecting that clarity. This is why calm, focused, quiet people often give the impression that they attract everything. They do not need to compete, do not need noise, yet doors seem to open for them because they have opened the door within themselves. So when you feel everything is disordered, when life seems against you, it may not be the off-kilter world, but you who have strayed from your center. The solution is not to run seeking more answers outside, but to stop, be silent, and focus. And then you will see, without forcing, without controlling, everything will naturally find its right place. Part 4. Silence and focus are the gateway to depth, but something deeper is this. Silence and focus do not merely help you regain external balance. They open a far vaster inner journey. For when order is re-established on the surface, the door to depth begins to crack open, where you can confront the most mysterious layers of the soul, where light and shadow coexist. The space Jung called the realm of individuation. Depth in Jung's philosophy is not some abstract, distant concept. It exists within us right here, right now. But ordinarily, we are drowned in the surface. Noisy news, meaningless comparisons, words that demand response, roles we must strain to uphold. Then the mind is like a lake, constantly stirred by the wind. Beneath there are countless creatures, currents and secrets, but we never see them. Only when the water stills, when silence is established, do we glimpse that depth. This is why silence and focus are the gateway, because they restore to the mind the ability to peer to the very bottom. To truly step through this gateway, you need to create small silences for yourself. In everyday life, it could be turning off all screens and sitting in quiet for a few minutes after a long day, letting the mind not be led astray by notifications and news. It could be the habit of breathing deeply in and out before reacting to criticism, as if wiping dust from the inner mirror. It could be writing a few lines in a journal at nightfall, not to judge yourself, but to allow suppressed voices the chance to appear on the page. These practices may seem small at first glance, but they are the keys that gradually unlock the door to the deeper lands of the soul. Imagine descending into a deep cave in the earth. When still holding a blazing torch, the firelight casts jagged shadows on the walls, distorting everything so you see only chaos. But when you lower the torch, allowing your eyes to adjust to the darkness, you begin to discern the true forms. Intricate cracks in the stone, glistening veins of ore, even ancient carvings hidden in the walls. The soul is the same. When shrouded in noise and the glaring light of social roles, we live only with the surface mask, the persona. But in silence, when no clamor obscures, we see the forgotten parts, primal fears, secret longings, wounds never healed. And this is what makes many fear silence, because they know it will force them to face the voices long imprisoned in the shadows. In reality, perhaps you have experienced this moment. A sleepless night, no phone, no one to talk to, just you with yourself. Suddenly, old memories surface, unanswered questions arise. Why this path? Why still carry regret? Those emotions drive many to fill the void with music, movies, meaningless chatter, anything but silence. But Jung would say, it is precisely at that threshold that you touch depth, and if you dare to pass through, you enter the land where true transformation occurs. Psychology also reveals the power of silence. In studies on the default mode network, the brain's default network, scientists have found that when we cease external activity, when we quiet, this region reconnects, processing memories, emotions, and forging a deeper self-view. This is the neural mechanism for what Jung long described. In stillness, the unconscious has the chance to speak, linking with consciousness to restructure the whole person. It is a process of healing and creation that no external sound can provide. The important thing is you cannot pretend to enter depth. You cannot act silent while inside is turmoil. Feign focus while the mind races. The universe senses this discord. Others may be deceived by the image you construct, but your energy will speak for you. If you have not truly confronted the shadow will still leak through every word, every action, keeping your life in chaos. But if you dare to be honest with the emptiness, dare to sit in silence and let the buried voices be uttered, you will begin to feel a new unity. And when within you becomes unified, depth unfolds. Many spiritual traditions have known this for thousands of years. Zen masters sit for hours in zazen, not to flee the world, but to pass through it into depth. Hermits withdraw from crowds, not to deny life, but to find truth within it. In Christianity, the image of desert hermits and ascetics, like St. Anthony the Great, father of the hermits, carries the same spirit. They leave noisy cities for desolate places, not to evade humanity, but to confront themselves and God in absolute silence. The desert becomes a symbol of inner shadow, where all noise dissolves, and man has nothing to cling to but faith and truth. The Jungian archetype of the hermit is this image, a figure withdrawn, holding a lantern illuminating the path in darkness. It is the lantern of consciousness, and the darkness is the unconscious. When we are silent, we become our own hermit, daring to enter the dark to find light. And this is the wonder. Once you step into depth, you are no longer swayed by surface things. Petty comparisons, criticisms, and vain desires lose their weight. Instead, you feel solidly grounded. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind, but the root of your own life tree. From here, what you do, what you say carries new weight, the weight of one who has touched depth. Thus, silence and focus are not merely life skills, they are the gateway leading you out of the turbulent surface into the land where transformation occurs. The gateway opens to meet your own shadow and reconcile with it. The gateway to inner unity, where every scattered piece is assembled into a whole self. This is why Jung once said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. One who only looks outward forever chases vague dreams. One who dares to turn inward, silent, focused, awakens. And that awakening not only changes how you see life, but changes life itself. As you reach the end of this journey, what lingers is not the applause of the masses, but the steady rhythm of an inner world that has found its footing. Transformation needs no fireworks. It grows quietly like roots sinking deep into soil. A little each day, unshowy but enduring. From the moment you accept slowing down to listen, life begins to change its grammar. Words soften, choices unhurry, and presence deepens. Others see it before you can even explain. A new day can thus begin differently. Instead of rushing affirmations, you allow yourself minutes of quiet to align your state. Instead of hasty retorts, you breathe deeply and recognize the rising emotion. Instead of chasing flattering labels, you let actions do the introducing. That softening is not a compromise. It is the dignity of one who has found a center to return to after every great wind. Of course, the path promises no ease, but that unease becomes worthy tuition for the solidity. You know where you stand and why. From that foundation, connections self-purify, work clarifies, and time ceases wasting on performances. You no longer need to stage an image. You simply live in your true rhythm. When your rhythm harmonizes, results know how to speak. If these lines touch you, leave yourself a small marker. Save this piece as a gentle reminder each time the world pulls you outward. So what happens when someone who has embraced silence, who has turned inward and done the work of self-discovery, now turns their attention to the world around them? What do they see that others miss? Have you ever wished you could read someone's mind, to know what they truly think, feel, or hide behind that smile? The truth is, you already do that every day. You just don't realize it. And if you've truly walked the path of silence and self-focus, you're about to discover that reading minds is not what you thought it was. Have you ever wished you could read someone's mind to know what they truly think, feel, or hide behind that smile? In reality, you already do that every day. You just don't realize it. Every glance you try to decode, every sentence you analyze, every behavior that confuses you, all are unconscious attempts to understand the human mind. But Carl Jung once warned, most of what we think is understanding others is, in fact, just us projecting our own unconscious onto them. Reading minds is not a miracle. It is an art. The art of seeing through the social mask, to touch the unconscious part that drives behavior, emotion, and choice. When you understand that structure, you no longer need to guess. You simply see. In today's video, we will explore one of Carl Jung's deepest concepts: how 3 simple questions can unlock anyone's unconscious. This is not a manipulation technique, but the art of perception. Seeing what others don't say, feeling what they haven't yet admitted. And if you truly apply this, you won't just read others. You'll begin to understand yourself at the deepest level. Are you ready to discover the 3 questions that can completely change the way you see people? Number 1, the illusion of reading minds. You're already doing it. Do you think reading minds is a superpower? In fact, you do it every day. You just don't realize it. Every time you look at someone and wonder, is he mad at me? Is she being sincere? Or is there a hidden meaning in that sentence? You are trying to read the human mind. We do this as naturally as breathing, because our survival instinct makes us want to know what others think, feel, and whether they're a threat or safe. But what Jung discovered is this: most of what we read doesn't come from the other person. It comes from our own unconscious. Think back to the last time you walked into a room, saw someone not look at you, and instantly thought, they don't like me. Yet, another person in the same situation might think, maybe they're just preoccupied. Same reality, 2 completely different interpretations. Reality didn't change, perception did. And that proves that mind readating is not about understanding others, but about understanding how you interpret the world. Jung called this the illusion of perception. Our mind is not a transparent mirror reflecting objective reality. It is a lens tinted by emotion, memory, and bias. When we look at someone, the unconscious instantly scans thousands of stored memories to find familiar patterns. Who once looked like this? Who once hurt me? Who once made me feel loved? Then it labels, assumes, and we call that intuition. But what we often call intuition is emotional memory reactivated. A therapist once said, when a client tells me, I feel that person is dangerous, I often ask, or are you remembering the feeling of danger you once had with someone else? That question changes everything about how we read people. Because if you just listen to your unconscious reactions without checking them, you're reading your own mind, not theirs. But don't get it wrong. Jung didn't deny that humans can be empathic. He meant that most of us don't yet know how to truly do it. We read others through fear, through wounds, through the need to be loved instead of through quiet presence. That's why Jung once said, understanding your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. To understand others, you must first understand yourself. And that is exactly what the next 3 questions will help you do. Instead of trying to guess what someone means, you will learn to listen to what lies beneath the surface of behavior. You will stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, what makes them act this way? Because once you understand the unconscious structure that drives people, you no longer need to guess. You will see through the mask everyone wears, not with your eyes, but with awareness. I once knew a woman. Every time she entered a crowd, she tried hard to impress. She talked a lot, shared her achievements, always. Wanted to be the most interesting person in the room. Someone who doesn't see deeply would think she's arrogant, attention-seeking. But someone who truly sees would notice something else. That wasn't confidence. It was fear. The deep fear of being overlooked. Beneath that radiant shell was a soul in defense, trying to prove she was worthy of being seen. And when you recognize that, your judgment softens into silent compassion. Because reading minds, in the way Jung described, isn't about guessing someone's thoughts. It's about seeing the unconscious motives driving their actions, the parts of them that don't yet feel safe enough to show. According to Jung, mind readating isn't a trick. It's the ability to see through the persona, the social mask everyone uses to protect the ego. The more confident someone appears, the more fragile they may be inside. The more someone speaks of morality, the more they might fear being exposed as weak. And once you learn to look, you'll realize people don't say what they think, they express what they fear. That's why Jung believed that to understand someone, you don't need hours of complex psychological analysis. You only need to ask the right questions. Not the questions they want to hear, but the ones that reach the deepest layer of the unconscious where logic can't hide. These 3 questions don't even require verbal answers, because sometimes all it takes is observing a reaction, a look, or an energy, and you already know. In the next part, we will explore the first question, simple yet powerful enough to reveal the entire psychological structure of a person. What do they fear losing? Because as Jung once said, fear always reveals the shadow a person tries to hide. And when you can see that fear, you don't just read them, you read the unconscious moving within them. Number 2. The first question. What do they fear losing? There is a question that seems simple, but if you truly understand how to use it, it can completely change the way you see people. What do they fear losing the most? When you ask this question, you step into the deeper layers of psychology, where silent fears shape a person's words, actions, and even destiny. Because Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Fear is the mirror of the soul. It not only reveals what someone is trying to hide, but also shows you which part of them is in control. The one who fears losing love will try to please. The one who fears losing freedom will always keep a distance. The one who fears losing their image will create a perfect mask. When you ask the question, what do they fear losing? You begin to look beyond surface behavior and touch the unconscious motive where their true self trembles in search of safety. I once heard the story of Claire, intelligent, confident, yet always overreacting whenever she was criticized. Just a small comment was enough to make her feel offended. She would argue, defend herself, sometimes even cut off contact as if protecting something precious. If you only look at her behavior, you'd see arrogance. But if you ask, what does she fear losing? You'll see the fear of being disrespected. Deep down, Claire wasn't defending her pride. She was protecting the feeling of being enough, something she had sacrificed a lot to gain. When you see that, judgment melts away, replaced by compassion. That is the power of this question. It melts the ice between two souls. When you look at others through its lens, you stop reacting. You begin observing. You no longer want to win the conversation, but to understand. And that quiet presence makes the other person feel safe, because for the first time they are not being analyzed but seen. Jung once called fear the language of the shadow. The shadow is the part of us that contains repressed emotions, shame, weakness, jealousy, insecurity. When someone fears losing something, it is their shadow that is speaking. A girl afraid of being abandoned may become controlling. A man afraid of failure may become overly ambitious. A person afraid of not being loved may do everything to make others need them. But when you ask, What do they fear losing? You no longer see irrational behavior. You see a soul trying to survive. This question is not just a tool for reading people. It is a practice of compassion. Because to see someone else's fear, you must touch the fear within yourself. When you realize that you too have once feared being forgotten, dismissed, or rejected, you stop reacting. You simply understand in silence. In the Bible, there is the story of King Saul and David. Saul, once admired by the people, began to fear when David became more beloved. He didn't hate David. He feared losing his throne, his love, his very image of himself. And that fear destroyed him. Jung would say Saul wasn't defeated by David. He was defeated by the fear of losing the self he believed he was. The question, what do they fear losing, reveals this truth. People are not driven by logic, but by what they cannot afford to lose. And interestingly, when you truly observe others through this question, you begin to reflect on yourself. Why do you feel irritated by boastful people? Maybe because you also fear being looked down on. Why do you resent controlling people? Maybe because you also fear losing your freedom. When you ask, what do they fear losing, you are holding a mirror. And sometimes what you see reflected is your own unspoken fear. Jung once said, "Where your fear is, there your task is." In the place you fear most lies the part of your soul that longs to be seen. Therefore, each time you ask this question about others, also ask yourself, what do I fear losing? Perhaps that very question will lead you to a deeper layer of yourself, where you stop living defensively and start realizing that fear is not the enemy, but the teacher. I recall an ancient Eastern metaphor. Within every human being there sleeps a dragon. The dragon is not a monster, but repressed energy, fear, pain, and wounds. The more you fear it, the stronger it becomes. But when you dare to name it, the dragon becomes your guardian. Humans are the same. When you dare to face what you fear losing, you stop being controlled and begin to be free. That is why Jung said that read in people's minds is not to control them, but to see the human behind the mask. Every time you ask, what do they fear losing, you touch one of the deepest layers of psychology, the layer of understanding. And in that moment, both are transformed. They are seen and you are healed. So, next time someone seems hard to understand, pause and ask yourself, what do they fear losing? The answer may not come in words, but in their eyes, in their silence, or in the strange feeling when you realize they are not scary. They are scared. And when you realize that, you will understand that reading someone's mind is really just another way of learning how to love them exactly as they are. If you have ever recognized in someone or in yourself a hidden fear that drives every reaction, share your reflection in the comments. What do you fear losing most in this life? Love, freedom, or the image you've worked so hard to maintain? Write it down, because sometimes simply naming your fear is already the beginning of understanding yourself more deeply. Number 3. The second question. What makes them angry? If in the previous part, we asked, what do they fear losing? Then the next question goes deeper. What makes them angry? If fear reveals what someone is trying to protect, anger reveals where they have been hurt. As Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Anger is not just a reaction. It is a mirror reflecting the unhealed parts of the unconscious. Observe carefully. When someone becomes angry after being criticized, it's often not about the words themselves, but because they feel their self-worth is threatened. When someone loses their temper after being ignored, they are not just mad at the indifference, but at the feeling of, I don't matter. And when someone overreacts to a small comment, it may be the echo of an old wound, a time they were judged, belittled, or dismissed. So when you ask what makes them angry, you are not searching for surface reasons. You are tracing the roots of the soul. Anger through Jung's eyes is a form of message. It says there is something here that has not been healed. The angrier the person, the deeper the old wound they were never allowed to express. Anger from being disrespected hides the fear of not being enough. Anger from being deceived hides the fear of abandonment. Anger from losing control hides the fear of being unsafe. When you ask what makes them angry, you are translating the language of the unconscious into something that can be understood. It's like the image of a lake during a storm. When the wind blows, waves rise. But when you look deeper, you realize that what stirs the surface is not only the wind, but the depth itself. Anger is the same. It shows on the surface, but its roots lie deep within. And if you are still enough, you can see through those waves and glimpse the person crying out beneath them. In a group therapy session, a mother named Laura shared that she often became furious whenever her son disobeyed her. She knew she was overreacting, but didn't understand why. When the therapist asked, "What about your child's behavior makes you so angry?" she fell silent for a long time and then burst into tears. "I feel useless, just like my mother made me feel." That single question opened the door to an unconscious layer she had never touched before. She realized her anger wasn't really directed at her child, but at the unhealed memory within. The little girl who was once scolded for not being good enough. After that day, every time her son made a mistake, she stopped reacting impulsively. Instead of shouting, she took a deep breath, knelt down to his eye level, and said, "I understand. Let's do better next time." Gradually, the boy stopped fearing her and began to trust her. Their relationship became softer and closer because once the mother saw her own anger, she learned to see her child through the eyes of compassion. That is the power of asking what makes them angry. Because sometimes when you're calm enough to ask, you not only help others understand themselves, but also help them recover the tenderness that fear once buried. If you practice this question in daily life, you'll notice it completely changes the way you see people. When someone shouts, ask yourself, what pain makes them shout just to be heard? When someone turns cold, ask what are they so afraid of that they have to build this wall of ice? Each question like this expands your heart. You stop wanting to react and start wanting to understand. And in that moment, you not only read their mind, you touch their humanity. Neuroscience has explained this. When humans become angry, the primitive emotional center of the brain is activated before the rational part can intervene. That means anger is often an unconscious reaction, not a deliberate choice. It flares up to protect the ego from feeling threatened. But interestingly, the very moment you can observe anger, whether yours or someone else's, without reacting, you activate the higher parts of the brain linked to self-awareness and compassion. You begin to read minds not through logic, but through awareness. When you see someone angry, don't look at them as a problem. Look as if their soul is trying to say something it doesn't yet know how to express. And perhaps that's why truly calm people are not calm because they have no darkness, but because they have faced it. They don't let anger control them because they've realized anger is not the enemy but a signal. It points us toward the place that needs healing, toward the wound that once recognized will no longer have power over us. So, next time you want to read someone, don't just listen to what they say. Listen to what makes them angry. That is the most primal language of the soul. When you can see through anger, you don't just see who they are. You see your own shadow reflected within them, and in that moment, true understanding begins. Number 4. The third question. How do they treat those who cannot benefit them? If the second question helps us see what someone fears losing, then the third question reveals who they truly are. How do they treat those who cannot benefit them? Carl Jung once said that a person's true nature cannot remain hidden forever because the unconscious always finds a way to express itself through everyday behavior. Some people use words to show kindness. But if you simply observe how they treat the waiter at a restaurant, the janitor, or someone they don't need to impress, you will see their real character. True kindness is not a social strategy, but the instinct of a mature soul. A truly compassionate person isn't kind to be praised. They are kind because they cannot be otherwise, because within them consciousness and instinct have already merged. The ego and the soul have become one. I once heard a story from a viewer named Amelia, a creative director at a major media company. To everyone around her, she was the image of success, eloquent, graceful, respected wherever she went. But one evening after a meeting, she went out for dinner with her team. When the young waiter brought the wrong dish, she didn't get angry or annoyed. She simply smiled and said, "It's okay. I've done this job before. I understand the pressure." The whole table fell silent for a few seconds, and then someone said, "Now I understand why everyone loves working with you." In that moment, there was no spotlight, no display, only character revealed in the smallest act. Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That is why he believed that true dignity cannot be measured by status, but by how one treats those who have no power to return the favor. On the psychological level, the way we treat the powerless reflects our relationship with the powerless part of our own soul. Those who tend to look down on others are often those who have not accepted their own helplessness or wounds. Meanwhile, those who can empathize with others are the ones who have learned to embrace the imperfect parts within themselves. There is one image I will never forget. The image of Princess Diana. In the 1980 seconds, amid glittering parties and royal fame, people saw her kneeling down, holding the hands of AIDS patients when most of the world still shunned them. No grand speeches, no cameras needed, just a simple gesture, yet it moved humanity. In that moment, Diana was no longer a royal figure. She became the embodiment of compassion that transcends ego. That act proved what Jung believed. When one acts from the soul, instead of from the persona, the social mask, that act has the power to awaken the world. If you want to read someone's mind, observe them when they think no one is watching. A person can speak about kindness all day, but only in the smallest moments when they face someone weaker. When there is no benefit, no audience, will you truly see who they are. Because a real character doesn't need a stage. It only needs a moment to show itself. When you ask someone, "How do you treat those who cannot give you anything?" you are not just reading their mind, you are inviting their soul to step out of its disguise. That question strips away the persona's shell and forces them to confront their authentic self. They may avoid the answer or be surprised, but the unconscious will remember. And that is the first step toward awakening. If you look closely, the world is divided into two kinds of people: those who use kindness as a tool and those who live kindness as an instinct. The first acts with purpose. The second acts because they can't do otherwise. A person may speak beautifully and perform good deeds, but if their motivation is recognition, it is still the ego in control. Only when an act no longer needs a reward do we touch the level of the soul. There is an old story about two potters in an ancient village, both renowned for their skill. One only made perfect vases when customers were watching, while the other quietly shaped clay even when no one was there. One day, someone asked the second potter, "Why do you still polish the bottom of the vase, the part no one sees?" He smiled and said, "Because someone does see me." That is the quality of a mature soul, doing what is right, even when no one is watching. And that is also how you can read minds at the deepest level. not through mystical intuition, but through quiet observation. When you see someone bending down to help a stranger without expecting thanks, when you hear someone speak kindly, even to those of no status, you are witnessing the presence of their soul. Ultimately, the question, how do they treat those who cannot benefit them, is also a mirror for ourselves. The way we see others reflects how we treat the fragile parts within us. When you learn to be gentle with those who have nothing to give back, you are also learning to be gentle with the vulnerable side of your own soul. And perhaps that is what Carl Jung wanted us to understand, that reading others is not about control but about awakening our humanity, because in the end, the deepest mind cannot be read by the intellect. It can only be felt by a heart that has learned to see the soul in every human being, even in the smallest of moments. If you believe that the world needs more acts of kindness done without expectation, press like to share this message. Every like is not only a way to support this channel, but also a reminder that true kindness still exists in small gestures, in quiet people, and within you. Number 5. The mirror principle. We don't read them, we read ourselves. After the 3 questions Jung proposed about what people desire, what they fear, and how they treat those who cannot offer them anything, there lies a deeper paradox that few notice. When we read others, we are not truly reading them, but reading ourselves. Jung once said, "Projections change the world into the replica of one's own unknown face." Every time we look at someone and immediately feel a strong emotion, irritation, contempt, envy, or even fascination, that reaction is not objective. It is a mirror reflecting the unconscious part of us that we have not yet dared to face. When you say, "She's so fake," it may be that you're reacting to the part of yourself that once had to pretend in order to be loved. When you think someone is arrogant, perhaps you are confronting the confidence within you that you've learned to suppress in order to be accepted. When someone provokes you, it might be your own desire for freedom rising up, demanding to live authentically. We do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are. In a Jungian therapy session, a woman once said she felt extremely uncomfortable around a young, talkative, confident coworker. "She drives me crazy," she said, "always showing off, always too confident." The therapist smiled and asked, "Are you sure you hate her confidence? Or do you hate that she expresses what you don't allow yourself to express?" The room fell silent. The woman looked down and whispered, "I think you're right. I was taught that women shouldn't stand out too much." In that moment, she realized what bothers us in others is often what we were once forbidden to become. This is how the shadow operates. When we do not accept a part of ourselves, anger, ambition, jealousy, or the need to be seen, we push it into the unconscious. But it does not disappear. It simply projects itself outward, wearing the faces of others like living mirrors. Jung called this psychological projection, a defense mechanism that makes us believe the problem lies in others, when in truth, they are only reflecting what remains unhealed within us. Jung said that the journey of growth is not about becoming better, but about becoming whole. It means seeing both the light and the dark within yourself without judgment. When you stop blaming and start observing yourself, you stop being a victim of emotion and become a student of your own soul. Then every interaction becomes a lesson. The person who hurts you is no longer an enemy, but a teacher showing you where you are still not free. One image I love to describe this is that of the moon and the ocean. The moon never touches the water, yet it moves the tides. Others are the same. They don't cause your emotions, they simply pull to the surface what already exists within you. And the more you can look at those waves, without judgment, the deeper you understand the vast ocean of your own mind. When you understand this principle, your entire way of seeing the world changes. Every encounter, every conflict, every strong reaction becomes an opportunity for self-discovery. Instead of trying to read others, you realize that all the clues are already in your own reactions. When someone irritates you, ask what part of me is being touched. When you admire someone, ask what part of me longs to be like that. And when you see someone suffering, ask what part of me has known that same pain. Because, in the end, reading others is not a supernatural ability. It is the art of self-awareness. When you know yourself deeply, you begin to understand everyone, because we are all made of the same psychological fabric. Repressions, fears, dreams, and unhealed parts. The more a person understands their own darkness, the less they judge the darkness of others. The more one reconciles with themselves, the easier it is to feel compassion for the world. Carl Jung once wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." And that may be the most perfect summary of this principle, because in truth, we have never really been reading others. We have only been reading ourselves through the eyes, actions, and reactions that the world mirrors back to us. So if you truly want to understand others, start by understanding yourself. Every time your heart reacts, see it as a message from the unconscious. Every time you judge someone, see it as a chance to ask, what part of me am I seeing in them? Because in the end, as Jung said, the world is not your opponent, it is your mirror. And when you learn to look into that mirror without fear or denial, you realize reading others was never the goal. The true goal is to see yourself more clearly, more honestly, and more compassionately through every soul you meet along the way. If you believe that every encounter is a mirror reflecting yourself, leave one word in the comments, a word that best describes what you realized after reading this. It could be understanding, reflection, awakening, empathy, or simply light. Let that word become a symbol for the journey you're on. The journey of seeing the world and then looking deeply back into yourself. Number 6. The fourth question. You never ask, what does this reveal about me? Following the mirror principle in the previous part, there is something Jung would probably smile at if he were here to tell you. The journey of reading people isn't over, because after observing, listening, and reflecting, there remains one last question that most of us forget to ask. The fourth and final question